everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in to the Last Cup Live, only right here on News Center Maine Plus. Second day of the new year. Could you believe it?
Yep, and we'll start with some stories we're following this morning. Millions of Americans, including some Mainers, will be paying more for health insurance this year. Tax credits that helped people pay for Affordable Care Act plans expired yesterday. Healthcare policy experts say without those tax credits, average annual premium costs could increase by 114%. If you need help navigating health insurance, you can find more information at coverme.gov. The deadline to enroll in the state's affordable coverage system is January 15th.
The New Hampshire State Fire Marshal's office is investigating two fatal fires. One happened on Union Street in Manchester just after midnight yesterday. Multiple people, including a child, were taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Officials say as many as 50 people have been displaced. One person reportedly died at the hospital. The cause of the fire is still unknown.
The other fatal fire happened in Meredith, New Hampshire. Police there went to a home on Old Center Harbor Road Wednesday evening for a welfare check. Officials say that they saw smoke and found a man unresponsive inside. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Firefighters put out the small fire. It was in the basement. They say it is not suspicious.
The Portland Fire Department is asking residents to adopt a hydrant this winter. Officials say taking just a few minutes to shovel out the nearest fire hydrant after a snowstorm can save firefighters critical time if they need to respond to a fire on your street. They ask that people clear a 3-foot radius around the hydrant and create a visible path to it so crews can quickly and safely access water. The department says any help will go a long way.
And if you're itching to get out on snowmobile trails this weekend, clubs throughout the state are asking you to either use them with extreme caution or maybe just don't go out at all. Hazards like fallen trees and inconsistent weather conditions have forced some clubs to close or limit hundreds of miles of trail systems. Many club leaders are also asking snowmobilers to avoid riding on ponds and lakes until the ice thickens up. When snowmobiling, it's also important to let people know where you're going and to keep your phone on you. So sounds like, Dana, with the weather we're about to have, it might help thicken up that ice, but yes, nothing in the snow department right away here.
Not really. We have a few chances for flurries, but our best chance of snow in the next 7 days was yesterday. So here's a look at some of those snowfall totals. Areas of down East Maine saw the most snow, up to about 7.5 inches. The farther north and west you went, the less snow you saw. And right now, temperatures across the state are in the single digits or below zero. It is a very, very cold morning out there, and it feels even colder because of the winds. Right now, we're seeing wind gusts up in the mid-20s, and we'll see that throughout the afternoon, which means our feels-like temperatures across the state downright frigid across the state. It feels like temperatures in the negatives, even in the negative double digits in areas of the mountains. So it is going to still be breezy this afternoon, wind gusts about 25 to 30 miles per hour, mainly out of the west or northwest directions, which means our feels-like temperatures will likely be in the single digits for much of the day. So there is a cold weather advisory in effect until 10 a.m. today, issued by the National Weather Service because of those wind chills. Much calmer across the state because we have mostly clear skies. That system that we had yesterday departed, which allowed for that cold air to enter into the state for today. So high temperatures will be in the upper teens to lower 20s across the northern tier, likely in the single digits. And if you're going to be getting out this afternoon, it will be mostly sunny, but it's going to be cold and a little breezy. That cold will last throughout the weekend, but by the middle of next week, Katie and Sharon, there might be a bit of a warm-up, but it comes with a wintry mix.
Oh, the mix. You almost wish the temperatures would stay down and we just get pure snow. It'd make things a lot easier.
Yes, that would be better.
Yeah. All right, not the greatest combo, but I'm sure we'll deal with it. Okay, this to me is fascinating. The reasoning behind some people's chronic tardiness is stirring some debate on social media. So a condition some people are blaming their lateness on is called time blindness. It's when someone has the inability to determine how long a task will take or comprehend how much time has passed. Aside from this time blindness, people can also be late because they have anxiety about arriving early, may think their time is more important than others, or sometimes they want attention, according to psychologists. So online, people are asking, where's the line between a genuine condition and just being plain rude. This to me is fascinating. I think when you work in this industry, you are so conscious of time and so conscious of deadlines.
Especially working in the mornings.
Yeah.
Every second counts in the morning.
Exactly. So I think you have no excuse. You cannot claim to lose track of time or not know how long a task will take, because right down to the last little swish of eyeliner before we run onto the set, we know exactly how long things take, right?
Yes.
So there's that. And I am not one to let people say they have a condition to let them off the hook for things, but I wonder if that could be possible.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that in terms of like people with ADHD. So people who have, that's what I've heard of, people who have ADHD can have issues with those timing sort of things. So I guess an actual, connected to an actual condition, but
yeah, it's like those two things are like associated with each other, sort of like a symptom.
I can understand that, because when you have ADHD, correct me if I'm wrong, but your brain is so full of so many things all at once. That's how it's been described to me, and so I can understand how focusing, right? That's the whole point. Is hard to stay on task.
Right. So becoming delays. Me personally, I'll admit, I'm a person who's chronically 5 minutes late to everything, which I think is usually a pretty excusable amount of lateness. Obviously, in times where you have to be on time, this job being one of them, I can be on time. But when it comes to like, okay, I'm going to, even just like I'm arriving at work, or I'm arriving, just like to hang out with someone, it's like I always take slightly longer than I think I'm going to. I'm always slightly behind.
I think 5 minutes doesn't even count personally.
I'm like, I don't think it's too much of a
10 minutes is once you, I think like 10 minutes is your mark where you start towing the line. I'm always a big proponent though of like, just send me a text. Like if you're running a little late, just let me know, and like, it's completely fine.
All is forgiven.
But if it's been like 20 to 30 minutes and I'm like, where is this person? Then I start to get like a little bit annoyed. But I also, in the same sort of way what you said, Katie, where sometimes it always takes a little bit longer than you think. That's what always happens to me, and that's how I end up being late to things. The one that I always joke about is that I forget that it takes physical time to get from my apartment to my car.
Yes.
If I'm like,
and there's frost and you gotta scrape it or whatever.
Yes, I'm like, it takes me 15 minutes to get somewhere, so I can leave my apartment 15 minutes beforehand. No, you can't.
Yeah, for me, it's coming into Portland, and especially during like rush times, because working this shift, there's never traffic. Coming in when nobody's on the road and going home when few people are on the road. And so when I have an appointment, like I live about 20 minutes outside of Portland, when I have an appointment in Portland, like in the afternoon, and maybe I'll go home in between, or maybe it's on the weekend, I forget that traffic and traffic lights and finding parking need to be factored into that time. So that can sometimes be a factor with me, but those are like the off times. I definitely think we need to, as a society, be more conscious of being on time, because I think so too. Believe it sends the message my time is more important than yours, and I think that's just arrogant and rude.
Exactly. Even though I feel like 90% of the people, it's like not their intention, but I'm like, it's just putting that like little bit of extra effort into what you're doing, so it affects someone you know or someone you don't know positively.
Yeah, being careless is just as bad as having an intention. Do you know what I mean? Like it said in there, the people who want attention, like that's just flat out awful. But
I also think that
that's
like, that's one that I never would have thought of.
No,
I know someone's like, someone shows up late because they want attention. I was like, that's interesting.
Well, it's like making an entrance, right? Making an entrance, right?
Okay.
Making an entrance, being fashionably late, as it used to be called.
Okay,
like, I think
I also feel like there's also a difference between like what you're going to. You said that a little bit, Katie. Like, if you're showing up to someone's wedding, like I'm getting there 20 minutes early just in case. But like if you're
going to a party.
A party is usually flexible unless you're like, be here.
Right.
Or else, when
I had my New Year's,
something stricter.
When I had my New Year's gathering, the first person showed up like 25 minutes after I said the party was starting.
Oh my gosh, yeah. How about want to hear a funny story about being late?
Yes, I do.
Of course.
So my mother was one of those chronically late
So is my mom.
people. She
No
made
offense,
us
Mom.
late for everything. It was a running joke that,
Yeah.
she made us late for everything. But what really took the cake was when we were going to my cousin's wedding.
Oh.
And it was in a town, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes away. I don't remember exactly. I was young. And so we know this wedding's coming up. We all pile in the car. We take the long drive to wherever we were going, which seemed like forever when you're little. And we get there and we get to the place and nobody's there. And it's like, uh-oh, were we early for once? And then, so we wait a while and no one's showing up. So then and this was before cell phones and everything. So you can't like double check the invitation or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then we thought, well, maybe we have the wrong church. So we stopped, it was in this little town in Vermont. So we stop at a convenience store and we're like, asking about different churches in town and stuff. And the guy's like, are you looking for so-and-so's wedding? It was my cousin. And we're like, yes. And they looked at us and said, that happened yesterday.
No. Oh no.
So my
Fully
poor
missing
mom
it.
never lived that down
I'm
because it
sure.
was the time she made us a whole day late. Yeah.
Oh my, that's
Yeah.
nightmarish to me.
Great story though. Great family, never live it down
That's-
kind
yeah,
of story.
that's
Great
class-
story
it's
now,
a classic.
horrifying at the
Yes.
time, I'm
Bring the time.
sure.
It
Yeah.
was. We were
I
all
just-
so mad.
I get so anxious running late. I think it comes from my father, who's the most prompt person I know. Even things that don't actually have a set time, if he like makes up a time, he's like, and we're sticking to it. Like we're like,
Sticking
we're
to
gonna,
it.
we're gonna go home at 5 o'clock. It's like 4:55. He's like, let's round it up, people. We gotta go. And I'm like, we don't have anything. We don't have anywhere we need to be. But he sets a time, and it's like we're sticking to it, even if it's arbitrary. So I get anxious.
So is your chronic 5-minute lateness your form of rebellion? Subconsciously, possibly?
I don't. Well,
That's
I
crazy.
don't know.
I think we just peeled back a layer of the onion, folks.
but I panic. Well, because it's always like I'm always being rushed, and then I'm behind. It's just. It causes me panic. My own lateness causes me panic.
Okay.
But I
It's
guess,
funny
but I just, it always happens.
It's funny that you think that, because also, like, I think of you, Katie, as one of my most prompt friends.
I am prompt though usually, but my slate.
Maybe it's because
Again,
you're so
it's
consistent.
only 5 minutes, but it still makes me really anxious.
Maybe it's because you're so consistently 5 minutes late that I just think you're on time all the time.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe I just need to calm down.
New Year's
Maybe
resolution.
we should do the next story.
Moving on, I'll be fine. All right, with the start of the new year, people, of course, working to clean up their diets. For some, that looks like having a dry January. That's when people don't drink alcohol for the first month of the year. Psychologists say it can make a large difference on your health. It's been shown to improve sleep, increase energy, aid in weight loss, and overall well-being. Experts say you can start by stocking up on your go-to non-alcoholic beverages. While it can be challenging, experts say that's part of the point.
Times when it's challenging might be a great way to reflect on how we're actually maybe relying on alcohol more than we wanted to.
Experts recommend getting friends and family involved so you have a support system throughout the month. It's also important to note that if you are a heavy drinker wanting to get sober, you should see a doctor before completely stopping because alcohol withdrawal can be severe.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. If you can't go 30 days without drinking, then you might need to assess your relationship with alcohol. I've done it before. And, I think it's more, for me, it's just, I've been drinking alcohol since I was a teenager, is the truth of the matter. And so it's more habit than
Okay, interesting.
anything
yeah.
else. And
Yeah.
like I used to, especially when I used to cook for the family a lot more, I used to like sip wine while I was cooking. And it's more the hand to mouth and the pretty glass and all of that. So I find if I substitute out, if I put anything in a big pretty wine glass,
Yes.
it makes me happy.
It's the ritual of it. This is me twirling my wine, it's,
Exactly.
yeah, kind of just the experience
Yeah, and,
of it.
and
I found the
now
same.
there are a lot of, I notice a lot more bars and restaurants are offering mocktails, which
Yes.
is really nice.
My gripe with them, though, is that why are they also $13?
Right. Well, because a lot of the
Oh,
places,
that's a good
they're
point.
really expensive. Well, a lot of the
Yes.
places use, a lot of the places are using like non-alcoholic liquor. So it's actual like liquor that they're like taking the alcohol out of, or like other fancy kind of like liquor substitutes, instead of like, okay, if I'm making a mocktail for my friends, like I'm making mojitos, I'm just not adding the rum, and it's still
Right.
delicious. But
Okay,
they're using like
interesting.
alternatives, and the non-alcoholic like liquors, wines, beer stuff are also like pretty expensive. Sometimes they're more expensive
Okay.
than the regular stuff, just because you have those extra processes.
Right.
You like extra steps.
So
Makes me wonder
Yeah.
though, using those, if it's that much healthier for you, because isn't it just that much more processed? I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't
if
know
you're
either.
trying, if it's a health issue that you're trying to knock off the alcohol, like it makes me wonder if some of these ultra processed alcohol substitutes.
Well, it's kind of like
Are just as bad.
like margarine or like
Right.
the fake sugar.
Right.
What's it called? Like stevia.
Aspartame,
Okay,
stuff
yeah,
like
that's
that.
like the chemical name for
Yeah.
it.
Well, stevia is totally different. Stevia is actually natural.
Oh, is it?
Aspartame's
okay.
a
I was wrong.
different. Aspartame's like a chemical thing.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just the not being alcoholic as opposed to like how stuff usually, or just like I have friends who are just sober just cause. So
Right.
for them, it's like, hey, it's awesome because you can be included.
I think it's a generational thing. In the 80s, when I grew up, everyone pretty much drank. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I'm finding more and more younger generations, it's a mix of people who do and people who don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going down.
100%.
I wonder. This is like kind of random. Like I wonder too if it's because like weed is legalized too here.
I bet
because
that has something to do with it.
I would
because
think so,
a lot of
yeah.
people maybe are smoking weed and doing that instead of drinking because
Instead
they
of
like
drinking.
they like it better or whatever, and just and have that as their kind of vice. So
I
to
think
say.
it's a mix. I think it's a mix of that, and I know plenty of people too
cultural.
who are just sober by
Yeah.
choice, and that makes sense too. And I think knowledge is power, right? Like nobody used to think of alcohol being that. We knew it wasn't good for you, but we didn't know how bad it could be for
Yeah,
you. You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
And so knowledge is power. You learn and you make different choices, I guess. So anyway. Kudos to any of you who are doing dry January. Best of luck. Yes, yes. Little round of applause. All right. A new growing New Year's resolution for Gen Z and millennials this year is to go analog. Going analog means to focus on activities that don't require a screen. It includes hobbies like painting, coloring, knitting, writing letters, playing board games, or listening to vinyls. As technology continues to grab for people's attention, younger generations are seeking refuge on these so-called analog islands. The goal has been to tap into nostalgia and find activities that are more meaningful to people.
I'm so trying to do this.
This one's a big one for me
Yes.
too. My friends and I were actually talking about this maybe like a week ago, which ironically my friend sent me a TikTok about going analog, which definitely has a flair for some irony there.
Ironic twist there for sure.
But like as a person who reads a lot, I read 44 books this year, which I actually did not reach my Goodreads goal, but that's fine. I still
Me neither. But you
That's okay.
more than doubled
Okay.
mine. So
Hey, you know what? If you read I think the stat is if you read even one book in a year, you read more than 50% of Americans.
wait, that's crazy.
I'm pretty sure that's the statistic.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That doesn't even surprise me if it is.
I've heard that around a lot. But it's also sort of interesting to me that I think even like with all of these analog hobbies, obviously they're taking you away from screens and such. And one of the things that I always go back to, I'll talk about this like ad nauseum, is that all of the analog stuff doesn't have any advertisements. Like I feel like streaming services, YouTube, like TV, there's just a lot of ads and they're everywhere and they feel inescapable. But like if you're reading a book, there's no ad. If you're doing a crossword, there's no ad. And my friends and I talk about this a lot, especially because streaming services started out without ads and now they do, unless you pay more and more and more money.
Same thing with social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, the ads are everywhere. And it is sort of funny that I think of in my head, if I'm watching a movie or I'm watching TV, like I know back when I was a kid, that was like screen time, and that was like, oh, it's not good for you to like watch too much TV. But I'm like, it feels better for me to like watch TV than to scroll
agreed.
on social media.
Because that's entertainment, which social media can be sometimes, but it's not in as much of it's not artistic so much. Like you're watching a
Yes.
film, you're watching TV, it's a piece of art, it's a piece of entertainment. as opposed, and even, reading is along that line too, as opposed to social media. Obviously, sometimes can be educational, can sometimes be just fun or whatever, but a lot of it is, just comparing yourself to other people and all of the bad things that can come with it too. And sometimes just nonsense, sometimes, all the things. So
the divisiveness.
I agree.
There are pros and cons for sure.
Yeah,
but
and it's just you just do it for longer.
Just get away from it. Yeah,
right.
It's
Exactly.
the main issue being it's a time suck.
Yes,
that
100%.
that you're not really super aware of unless you make yourself aware of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Love
I'm
the analog thing.
trying to do that too.
I gave my kids puzzles for Christmas this year.
Love a good puzzle.
I do too.
Love a good puzzle.
I do too.
A puzzle and an audiobook, I'm set for 4 hours.
Yes. Great
love it.
time. Great time.
Katie, we'll do that this weekend.
Just two of us listening to audiobooks separately.
Separately.
Doing the same puzzle.
You can do the puzzle together. That works.
That sounds like a great
That is more
time.
social than a bunch of people sitting around doing this in the
Yeah.
same
So
room, which
true.
we've all seen,
It's just
right?
parallel play like toddlers do over adults. It's good for our growth and development.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
All
Love
right,
it.
well, so talking more about screens, some state legislatures are looking to keep younger generations off of them. Since yesterday, social media platforms have set a 1 hour daily limit for teens under 16 in Virginia, unless they have parental consent. Virginia state officials say the restrictions are meant to protect mental health. However, tech companies, of course, are arguing in federal court that the measure is unconstitutional. However, back in September, more than 40 attorneys general, including AG Aaron Frey, asked Congress to require warning labels on social media. This is, and we've seen in other countries too are doing this a lot more, restricting social media for people under a certain age.
Australia.
Yes,
is leading the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting, at least that, lawmakers are realizing. It's taken a long time, I think, to realize what a lot of the harms of social media are, and even just like unrestricted internet access for kids at large. I've said this a lot before, that social media used to be, you're just catching up with your friends. Your Instagram feed used to just be your friends' posts. And that's totally fine if you're a young person. You're just, catching up with your friends and seeing what they're up to and seeing their pictures. But then you get to something, even every social media platform now, and TikTok kind of started, of just like, it's just everything and everyone. And there's not really many filters to it. And you're seeing, it's not just your friends, it's the whole world, and a lot of times it's inappropriate stuff is
Well, and even as
easier
you
to
pointed
get
out,
in
like
there.
the comparing and the
Yeah.
bullying and the
That can
ganging
happen
up
too,
on
right.
and the mob mentality that sometimes happens
Yeah.
on social media. It's all to be of concern. What the solution is, I think, is highly debatable.
Right, that's what I was
but
gonna say too.
It's definitely a concern that needs to be addressed somehow. I think it's really heartening to see, certain generations deciding they're going to set their own limits on it. That's the best of all possible worlds, right?
Yeah.
Is when people start realizing how bad it is, or can be, and start setting their own limits. That's the healthiest thing to happen, right?
Because social media has benefits and drawbacks, that's why I don't know necessarily how good a 1 hour limit, for example, it's it feels kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
But it's nice that I think it's nice in some ways that you can still catch up with your friends on social media. You can use it for some of the benefits, but maybe the drawbacks aren't as big because it's a reduced period of time. You can't just be sitting there scrolling all day.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the right answer. None of us do, but
No, we'll find out. I mean, as
We'll
more
find
and
out in
more
10 years.
states and countries start experimenting with these limits, I guess we'll figure it out eventually. Let's hope, anyway.
yeah.
All right, well, changing gears here, but yesterday we told you about Polar Plunge Day. Well, one community in Washington state celebrated by attempting to break the Guinness World Record for the largest polar plunge ever recorded. One person estimates that nearly 5,000 people came out to participate. To count, participants had to follow a few rules, like remaining waist deep in the water for at least a full minute, which sounds like a pretty big challenge there. Norway holds the current record with just over 3,000 participants. The community in Washington still waiting for the official word from Guinness on if they broke the record, which having to do all that, I hope they did. I hope it was worth it for those almost 5,000 people.
Who stayed in
One
the water
full minute, that would be the longest minute of those people's lives.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a long time to be freezing.
Yeah.
in
Usually
the
you just
water.
dunk and then go.
Right,
from
that's
what
what most people do. Yes, yes.
Like,
Although, depending on where it's being held, like in Old Orchard Beach where they hold it, that is a very flat sort of part of the beach, and they have to
you gotta go deep.
you got to run in for a little while.
you're, like, still
depending
going.
on what the tide is doing, it takes you a little while to get actually, and I don't know what the
that
rules
might
are.
be worse.
Yeah, I think you have to actually go under, maybe, I'm not sure, but yeah. Yeah.
That's
Meanwhile,
wild.
here in Maine, dozens of people did start 2026 with the cold embrace of the ocean.
As Sharon just mentioned, there's a yearly polar dip in Old Orchard Beach. They've raised millions of dollars for Special Olympics over the past 35 years. And our photojournalist Steve Sherburn was there for the plunge.
Good morning, everybody. We are just 10 minutes away from our opening dip for this year's lobster dip.
Let's do this! Hurrah!
We're ready. We're ready to go.
dipping?
Yeah, we're dipping.
Do you have a name? What do you have for a name here?
Laverne and Smokey. Happy New Year.
One more year, Rocco?
Yeah, one more.
Dippers up here. Anybody who's dipping? Back here. So you get to do the inaugural first dip. Is that always the custom?
They allowed me to do it back a few years ago. I'm really glad they did too, because I hate to get trampled by all those people coming in behind me.
How was it?
Cold.
Cold.
It was cold. It was worth it though. Great time. Good cause.
For Special Olympics Maine, the rugby club started this back in 1989. A lot of my buddies aren't here anymore to do it. They're up above looking down, so I do it for them and obviously for a great cause.
Well,
Oh my God, worth it! Woo!
All right, our Steve Sherburn with that story. More power to you all, and no thank you.
The more I'm watching it, I'm like, do I need to do a polar plunge?
Really?
Yes. Maybe
Charity.
not. Maybe not this year. Well, I mean, obviously it's already passed, but 20 degrees might be too cold. But if it was 30,
Well, usually you
I
have
just
to
like to
commit
go in
to
the
it
water.
before you actually
Well,
know.
yes,
That's
right.
the
So you gotta
problem.
commit. So maybe-
You would actually consider it though?
I would. I just really like going in the water.
I do too.
And it would be crazy.
And most
like,
of the
I don't think
people
it'd be
I
pleasant,
know
but
think
it-
that I'm okay with cold water, colder than they would be okay with, but not that. Nope.
Yeah, because in New England you're used to the water being like 60 degrees, and that's, you know,
Right.
par for the course.
yeah.
This is definitely a lot worse, but I'm like, I can do it.
I would never feel warm again after that.
Exactly. Nope. Okay, we'll cheer you on.
Yeah,
Go
thanks.
for it,
Cheer us to the sidelines with our parkas
We'll
on.
see what I decide. Okay, we'll see if critical thinking takes over or not. All right, well, looking at the national calendar for today, it's a good day for foodies, for starters. It's National Buffet Day. May not be great for anyone starting a New Year's diet, but nonetheless, it's a day to enjoy a big spread of varying dishes. The idea of a buffet, as we know today, started at the 1939 New York World's Fair. The Swedes came to show off their smorgasbord at an exhibition, as we talked about in the Stumper today. It was a meal usually given before dinner and drinks. You guys like to hit a buffet?
It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I thought not.
Yeah,
not.
no, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. You know, when you go, like, the most recent example of going to a buffet that I have is you go to an all-inclusive resort, and it's usually like
right.
lots of buffets. And this particular one was really, really good. It had a lot of different options, and the food was actually quite good. I think buffets can be hit or miss.
Yeah, it can be
Yes.
great. It can be food poisoning. These things happen.
That's not like a good buffet is good, but a bad buffet is
Is
bad.
really
Take wow.
That's a good
I don't know
point.
if I don't remember like the last time I've been to like a legit buffet. I mean, I just think of like
College
being
cafeteria?
right. I just think being in college.
Yeah.
A college dining hall is just kind of one big buffet, and I do like that. I like the variety.
Yeah.
Love having to not like. Love being able to try, because I got to try a lot of things when I was in college. I was like, there was random food. They're like, we made vegan, whatever, and I'm like, I'm not vegan. I'll try it. I want to see what it tastes like.
Yeah.
So,
And then you
for
can only
trying
get like a
different
small
things-
piece, so if you don't like it, you're like, I'll never eat that again.
Yeah,
And
no
then you
worries.
find out, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there are advantages. That's a good point, but okay. You may find this at some buffets, the cream puff.
Come on now.
And what better day to eat it than on National Cream Puff Day? The name is pretty self-explanatory. It's a puff pastry filled with cream. It's believed to have originated in France in the 16th century. Those similar dishes existed across Europe. However, the French are said to have perfected the pastry. Fun fact, the largest cream puff ever made was more than 125 pounds. It was made at the Wisconsin State Fair in 2011. Cream puff fans?
Absolutely.
I don't know if I've ever had one, actually.
Oh, really? I'm trying to think what's kind of similar. You know those French horns?
Nope.
Nope, you don't know those.
Lobster tail, same thing.
What?
You guys are not familiar with the lobster tail?
I'm familiar with the animal.
Yeah,
The crustacean.
Wait.
The
The
crustacean.
meat that's found in the tail
No,
of the lobster.
no. Let me show you a reference photo. It's just a pastry, but it's in the shape of a lobster tail. It's just a puff pastry, but it's a lobster.
That's just a long cream puff.
Exactly.
Right,
That's what
which
they
is
are.
the same thing like a cream horn is, kind of. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like very familiar with these. Oh yeah, they pulled it up. Thanks,
There you
guys.
go.
Yeah, guys, who's familiar with the lobster
I've
tail?
never heard of that before.
I mean,
my grandmother used to make cream puffs, and she used to put chocolate drizzle on the top, which made them
nice.
that much better.
I just feel like this is probably just the New England variety.
Yes.
These were always at like my bakeries in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
These ones they're a little like too big though, because they're huge. So it's like
Oh, wow.
they're not the actual like size of lobster tail. They're like huge. So it's not as like delicate. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have a couple little cream puffs. They're heavy.
Cream puffs come in different sizes too, though. Yeah, but
I usually
maybe
see the small
usually
ones.
not huge.
These
But yeah,
are-
they have
these
the
are
little
big.
bite-sized ones, which are kind of fun and
I
nice.
love those.
Yeah.
I love a pastry in general, so most of them, yeah.
Are you
I
a
rock with
pastry
it.
person?
Yes and no. I like croissants and stuff like that, but I'm not like a scone girly. I want my pastries to be as close to bread as possible.
Well, you might like
see.
cream puffs then, because I would say
Okay.
they're closer to a croissant than a scone, wouldn't you? A scone is really dense and thick,
yeah.
and a croissant is light and fluffy, and a cream puff is light
It's
and
light and
fluffy.
fluffy, and
Okay.
there's just
It's
cream
kind of
in it.
like a croissant with like either think of vanilla pudding or whipped cream kind of consistency.
Okay, I might have to
inside.
give it a try. I don't usually I don't like jelly donuts or like Boston cream pies, like the stuff like in the middle. I know, I'm sorry, Katie. So I'll have to give it a try and
It's probably pretty close to like a Boston cream donut.
different. The filling is usually like a more whipped cream like.
Agreed.
Because that's
Okay.
a full custard.
I do
right?
like
Boston
whipped
cream is a
cream.
full custard.
Okay.
So
This is just telling
could
me I have
this
to
could
try
happen.
one.
This is your New Year's challenge.
Year's resolution.
To try a cream
Try a
puff and
cream puff.
report back on
Exactly.
the last cup.
Recommend
you're
me a
back.
bakery.
Okay, send Dana an email and let her know where you recommend she get a cream puff.